Thanks. It's good. It's good to be back home in the city of my birth. You know, you can take the Scouser out of Liverpool, but you can't take Liverpool out of the Scouser. And it's good to be back home when Liverpool just won 3-0 as well. Look, I wish Everton well as well. Every time Jeremy came to Liverpool, in the first leadership campaign, in the second leadership campaign, I hope these aren't going to be every bloody year, quite honestly, but also then in the general election. In Liverpool, we had the biggest turnouts literally in recent political history. Tens of thousands of people to come and listen to Jeremy. Why? Because like all of you, Jeremy and I don't want to live in the 6th richest country in the world, and at the same time, there are 5,000 of our fellow citizens out there sleeping on the streets. In the 6th richest country of the world, there are 1 million people now, as a result of Tory cuts, who are not receiving the social care they need. They're largely elderly, they're isolated, they're suffering, and they're vulnerable. In the 6th richest country in the world, they introduced policies that targeted disabled people and have pushed many of them, from the research from Liverpool University, 500, into taking their lives. We're not willing to tolerate that anymore, are we? No! So the solution is this. The solution is a Labour government, but a Labour government which fulfills our dream. And that dream is this: a socialist in number 10. And if he makes the right appointment, hopefully a socialist in number 11. That was a job application. I'll tell you what we're going to do. When we go into government, yes, we're going to transform our society. First of all, we're going to make sure that all those people on waiting lists, the people who are now 70,000 children growing up in temporary accommodation because they haven't got a permanent roof over their heads, and yes, those 5,000 sleeping on the streets, we're going to make sure they're housed. How? By building 1 million new homes, and we're going to be proud to call most of them council houses again. And you know, when it comes to it, we're going to ensure our National Health Service is not just properly funded, but when we put money into the NHS, we're not going to tolerate that money going in the front door and then going out the back door into the pockets of Branson and all the other profiteers. We're going to end PFIs. No more PFIs. We're going to bring them back. And you know, when we go into government, we've made it absolutely clear, and all the press, all the media opposed it. And yet, they're some of the most popular policies we've advocated. We're going to bring back into public ownership and control rail, water, Royal Mail, energy. We're going to end the era of our people being ripped off by these privateers and profiteers. And you know as well, we should not tolerate in our society that people have to survive just to feed themselves and their children by going to food banks. 1.3 million food parcels handed out last year. I congratulate the food banks for what they do, but in a civilized society they should not exist. And you know, the reason they exist is because out there we have 4 million children living in poverty. 2/3 of them are in families where someone's at work. What does that tell you? It tells you wages are so low that people cannot survive on those wages. So we're going to introduce, in that first Queen's speech, a real living wage, £10 an hour. And you know as well as I do, the best way of securing a decent wage, the best way of protecting yourself at work is join a trade union. So when we go into government, we will scrap the Tories' Trade Union, Anti-Trade Union Act. We will scrap it in the first 100 days. We're establishing a Department of Employment. That Department of Employment will be responsible for returning this country to collective sectoral bargaining. What does that mean? It means you have a trade union negotiating decent rates of pay. Do you know, we're not asking for the earth. We're asking for a government that simply abides by the law, the International Labour Organization conventions that should apply across the globe. And in that way, we will raise people's standard of living. They asked me, how are we going to afford all this? Where is the money coming from? It's coming from a fair taxation system. Yes, in our last manifesto we made it clear that we would increase the income tax on the top 5% of earners. You know, not an awful lot. Within next door, they made their contribution. We'd also, we'd end the tax cuts to the corporations and we'd reverse, not all of them, but most. Because those tax cuts to corporations were meant to encourage investment. And yet those corporations are now sitting on 700 billion of earned income not invested. And yes, we'll introduce what some of us have been campaigning for nearly a lifetime. A Tobin tax, a financial transaction tax on the City of London speculators. And I tell you this, we debated and we discussed and we published an enforcement and transparency programme for taxation. And we said, the rich and the corporations, you will pay your taxes. We will end the tax avoidance and tax evasion that takes place on an industrial scale. Some of you know, during the general election, they accused me of having a magic money tree. I found it. Exactly right, I found it. It's in the Cayman Islands. We're going to dig it up and bring it here. On that basis, we'll be able to fund the NHS, fund the education our children need, but we'll also make sure that our kids, when they do everything asked of them, stay on at school, do their A-levels, get their grades, go to university, and no longer have the burden placed upon them. On average, £57,000. We will scrap tuition fees once and for all. Now we're now preparing for the next general election, for whenever it comes. Up until now, I've been pessimistic that the Tories will cling on to office right to 2022. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Because now it's interesting. Most of the commentators mentioned it as well. The Tories hate each other now more than they hate us. So I believe that they could fall apart at any time, and we've got to be ready, whether it's this autumn or next spring. We've got to be ready to go into that campaign and win, and we've got to be ready to go into government as well. But I tell you this will be like no other Labour government or any government. This isn't about sending a group of MPs off to take ministerial positions and that's it. When we go into government, we all go into government. We now have over 500,000 members, the largest political party in Western Europe. The trade unions are growing again. We are now a mass social movement. And we're proud to say that movement is a socialist movement. So I just urge you now, I just say this, if you're not a member of the Labour Party now, join. Join. We need you. We need you. If you're a member of the Labour Party, make sure you're active. Make sure we're on every campaign, every picket line, every demonstration, because now we need to mobilise on a scale we've never seen before. Because the challenge is so great, it means the opportunity is so great. We have the opportunity of creating what many of us have campaigned for. Another world is possible. I believe now, with Jeremy Corbyn as leader, another world is in sight. Comrades, brothers and sisters, thanks for coming tonight. The most important role I've got this evening is to introduce the next band, Captain Scar, Solidarity.
Can we make some noise? Oi, oi! Lovely, lovely.